Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running.
It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise. We aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
RoboCop is over. I'd buy that for $1.
We get the best of both worlds. The fastest reflexes modern technology has to offer, onboard computer-assisted memory, and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming. It is my great pleasure to present to you RoboCop.
really good.
He's not a guy, he's a machine.
Old Detroit has a cancer. Cancer is crime.
Let the woman go. You are under arrest.
You better back up, pal!
Your move, creep.
Andy, RoboCop.
We're talking about the animated series, right?
Right. We're starting with RoboCop 3. Okay, RoboCop. How many times can we say that? I enjoyed my time with RoboCop. It was another one of those movies, 1987, that was important to me in my teenagedom. I really loved it. I felt like a big boy watching it. And now I know, because I've already seen your Letterboxd review, how it held up for you, which is strong.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Very fair.
It is strong to me, too. But I have to say, I know also how much you hated the remake. And I just want to be a voice of reason for your detestation of the remake. Because there are things in the remake that they do that they actually, I think, improve upon. It's not a great, you're right, it's kind of a slog, but there are things in that movie that are worth more than 1 star, and my heart was a little bit broken. So maybe we talk about that in the sequels and remakes, and you can have your table there. But just know, I'm coming in with a little bit of, you know what, they kind of made RoboCop better. So
interesting.
That's out there now. That's out there now.
I don't even know where to start. We're starting with that. Okay. Well, this whole series, this is the final entry in our 1988 Academy Awards Best Visual Effects nominees. The 2 nominees, Interspace and Predator, the Princess Bride and RoboCop, these are the 2 films that were added on, that members had voted on as other films to talk about. And then, of course, we had as our December 2023 member bonus episode, The Lost Boys, also not nominated, but voted on by our members for us to discuss. You know, we've been kicking off these conversations talking about the visual effects. So let's start there. There are a lot of visual effects throughout this film. We've got the RoboCop suit. We've got all of the violence that is perpetuated on many characters in many different ways. We've got the stop motion animation, which with Ed 209, we've got all sorts of stuff.
This movie is about robot cops, and the image that Andy picks for the hero image for this movie on our website is a thug melting in goo, in toxic goo. Like, that is a hell of an effect. There are some crazy effects going on in this movie.
Yeah, it's full of them. And so, I mean, I feel like, you know, we could kind of just throw a stick at them and just start talking. Which one, where should we start talking about the effects? Should we bring up, you know, Robotine as the head bringing all this to life?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's where we start.
Good old Robotine. We have talked about him. He was involved in what was the first thing we talked about that he worked on? Probably The Thing. He also worked on Inner Space this same year. He's worked on Piranha, which we've talked about. He'd go on to work with Paul Verhoeven on Total Recall, Basic Instinct. He worked on RoboCop 2, RoboCop 3. He worked on 7. He worked on the first Mission Impossible film. He worked on Fight Club. You know, he's even worked on Game of Thrones. He's been all over the place in the world of effects, but in so many ways, like between 2002 and 2014, when he did some work on Game of Thrones, kind of disappeared for a long time. But I mean, the stuff that Robotine creates has always been, I think about like effects on film, and just I think Robotine is behind so many amazing things that I love, like the character's name in Legend, the creature makeup, Darkness, Tim Curry's creepy devil character, like that special effects makeup that he put together for that. Just like, that's the sort of stuff Robotine does, and totally brings his A game here. Yeah.
Well, The Howling, you know, we talked about The Howling on a Sitting in the Dark briefly. Yeah, I mean, he's a Piranha. What are you gonna say about Piranha? So yeah, I mean, he's an incredible talent. And 7, I mean, you talk about the effects that he created in 7 around things, you know, working in the auspices of this sort of horrific things humans do to one another. Like, it was just really perfectly gruesome. So yeah, I think he's a real talent, and I think it shows in this movie. It's incredibly fun, this movie, like the effects, and it feels bright and colorful, and silver. A lot of silver, so less color, but it still feels very bright to me. And being able to do all this and make it feel real and in world is a real testament to his skill and the team, right, bringing this together.
Yeah, the RoboCop suit. I mean, there's a lot of stories about how difficult it was to create, to work with on set. Peter Weller notoriously had a terrible time making this film because the suit was so hard to work in, so hard to move in. It was so hot. It said in the heat of Dallas summer when they were filming, when on the really hot days, he was losing up to 3 pounds just from all the sweat because he was sweating so profusely in the suit, which is just crazy. But I mean, though the right work was put into it, paired with Peter Weller and movement coaches to really come up with something that feels so authentic. The way that it moves, it just feels like this big, heavy titanium machine with a man inside kind of moving around. And it's, a testament to all of their work that they came up with something so incredible.
It's really deceptive because it looks like, intuitively, it feels like it's a suit. You put on the suit, but it's like a 10-hour suit to get in and out of this thing. And that endeavor for Peter Weller is, it's not lost on me, like how long these shoot days were, because once you get in the suit, you're not coming out of it easily. So it's incredible. And then we get into some, classic stop motion, right? Ed 209 gives us some old school filmmaking,
which is really fun to do. And obviously in the scope of lower budget for this film, it gave them a chance to create something that they otherwise likely would not have been able to do. And so by actually kind of creating this stop motion that Phil Tippett worked on, this sequence, like coming up with the little stop motion sequence of these 2-foot-tall miniatures, it works. And I mean, through today's eyes, you can kind of see the line between the stop motion and then the plates that they were filming for it to work within. But, in the magic of the movies, it's like, where's that line in the world of effects of not buying something like this versus not buying something in, Quantumania or something? It's like, I don't know. I just feel like the line is there. And if you're invested in the story, it allows for those sorts of issues to kind of be eased a little bit, I suppose. And there's something about the stop motion animation that gives it this connection to the old world film special effects, that it enhances the tone of the comic nature of the film anyway. And so to that end, I feel like it kind of fits.
Yeah, I think so. Did you happen to watch it with your kids?
I watched it with my son, yes.
What did he think of the stop motion stuff in particular?
He loved the Ed 209. He actually even called out that style and really enjoyed seeing it kind of looking that way.
Mine too, but also did not get lost in it, right? It's such a clear effect that it was like such a thing to say, oh, well, look at what the old people were able to make back in the day, kind of an effect. Like, it was a dated effect, and he wasn't lost. I was surprised that he wasn't lost in the fact that it was this was a threatening scene. Like, let's get scared at this giant robot who's out of control. Let's go ahead and let ourselves get lost in the magic of the movie. And I, as somebody who's seen the movie a million times, like I was really thrilled by that sequence. I was like, oh, I love Ed 209. And so I was a little disappointed that the youth didn't catch on as I did. I was disappointed in my own child, Andy. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, it is an interesting element to end up including. And I can see, like, in the scope of unlimited budget, if they had everything that they wanted, they could have used, I mean, they did build that full size one to be standing outside of OCP, but obviously they didn't have the budget to actually do more with that. And so to what they were trying to achieve,
it's incredible.
I feel like they actually, captured something that works quite well. And I think when you're watching the Ed 209 taking on RoboCop through the offices of OCP, it actually is quite effective. Like, it actually works. I'm buying that they're actually having a fight and interacting. And it's the sort of effects work like you see in Jurassic Park, where the filmmakers know when to use the stop motion, when to use just the arm of Ed 209 for RoboCop to be interacting with. Like, they find all of the different elements. Okay, here we can use a piece of it. Here's the stop motion. And it's blended in a way where it puts it together, in my mind, at least.
Yeah, to me too. I totally buy into the fact that we're dealing with a fight between giant robot and robot man. It absolutely plays for me. But again, I think it's because I saw it as young as I did. Like, it just, maybe I want to blame a little bit of that on my son's inability to see it for what it was.
Oh man! Aside from the robots, this is an incredibly violent film, something that Paul Verhoeven amped up so much because he wanted it to kind of cross the point of horror and disgust into over-the-top craziness to make people laugh. And so it is a very, very violent film. Right out of the gate, the first thing that we see is Ed 209 when Dick Jones is demonstrating it to the board up in the conference room. The Ed 209 kills and kills again one man, poor man who is chosen to be kind of the assistant in this demonstration. And it is so incredibly bloody that this was the sequence that they ended up cutting quite a bit out of for its theatrical release to get the R rating. It has since been restored in all of its bloody glory, as of, I don't know, the late 90s, I think, when Criterion first released the director's cut on Laserdisc. And it's pretty much been in every cut since. So that kicks us off. And I mean, a lot of squibs. I think they had 200 squibs or over 200 squibs attached to the actor. They had a pouch full of spaghetti squash mixed with fake blood, like all sorts of stuff just attached to him. He said it was a horrible, painful experience. He felt like he kept getting punched. So I don't know if that was the effects team not protecting him properly, but regardless, like, that kicks us off with the violence. We'll talk about kind of the thematic uses of it in a minute, but as far as like the way the violence is depicted, I mean, it starts from there, it goes through a lot of other sequences, lots of blood and gore. How does that all play for you as far as the world of effects?
To me, even the assassination, the opening assassination by Ed 209 is not the pinnacle sequence for me. This one comes a little bit later. It is Murphy's disintegration. Yeah. My God, that is an extraordinary sequence of violence, and maybe made more impactful over the years as we've been dealing with sort of the relationship of police and police violence against police, and what an incredibly dangerous world that is. And the fact that when he gets that hand shot off and his arm shot off and all of that is such a it's such a grotesque portrayal. And Weller, I think, is really good performatively at demonstrating this violence. Like, it looks like it hurts a lot, and right up until the moment his head hits the pavement. It's extraordinary. It is extraordinary, practical, gooey violence.
And again, working with Rob Bottin to figure out what are the things that make sense for us to do, how can we shoot this in a way where people are going to buy into it, figuring out, okay, here's where we need to create a prosthetic hand, here's where we need to create a prosthetic arm, here's where we need to create an entire prosthetic top half of Peter Weller so that we can actually put a bullet through his brain and have the back of it kind of blow out. It's a lot of thought and work that would go into these effects. And this is, Paul Verhoeven, who, is a director that certainly warrants a lot of conversation. This is early in his career in America, and he hadn't really worked on this sort of stuff before, so was really relying on the effects team to come up with stuff that made his vision come to life. But he is the one who said, I really want this to be over the top and violent because I want it to kind of cross that line of excess into humor. And And so when and in the case of watching Murphy get killed, like this was a very important moment where you wanted to really have the audience attach themselves to this character, and you see him go through some horrific things. And so you feel really bad for him. And then, that helps you connect to this kind of robotic character who ends up filling in for him for the rest of the film. And I find that to be a powerful use of the violence in the film, just the way that it's portrayed. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the way that they kill Murphy, it's horrifying. And this is a part where I don't think the violence crosses into humor. I just think this is like horrifying violence that works to really cement your connection to this character. And you're heartbroken that he's been killed in such a gruesome, painful way.
And they go right into the rehabilitation of him as RoboCop. And I think that sequence is done with a lot of heart. Like the way they keep cutting back from these wide angle shots of his POV, looking at all the equipment being put on his face and checking his eyes. And then they cut to what's going on in his head with his wife trying to talk to him and his son watching TJ Laser, like all of those pieces. And then cutting back to the images of the guys actually executing him with their machine guns. Like that is an extraordinary kind of montage that I think has just the right amount of, as you say, that horrific violence that isn't funny, and the heart as we watch him sort of lose himself and come back as something different. I think it's great for a movie like this. Like you don't expect quite that much. I didn't expect quite that much sensitivity in that sequence. Like it's really a low point for Murphy, and he really makes me feel like a low point as an audience member. It's great.
And that's, stepping aside from the effects for a moment, that is really something that drew Verhoeven to the story and to his character. And the sequence for him that was the most important was when RoboCop goes back to Murphy's house and goes through that little the futuristic real estate tour of the house with the little monitors everywhere. And as he's walking through the house, he's reliving moments with his son, with his wife, with, taking pictures, like all of these different moments that kind of keep coming back to him. I mean, like he's having these flashes of memory and soul and connection to that humanity that he had presumably lost when he became RoboCop. And, I think that's exactly what Verhoeven latched onto perfectly throughout this film, that really kind of continues to connect us to RoboCop over the course of the story. And so by the time we walk through the whole film and we are following him after all the awful things that have happened and having to deal with Directive 4 and just all the things that he has to fight against, by the time we get to the end and we hear him say Murphy as his name, like we are connected to this character, and there is as much human for us in this character as there is robot.
Yeah, for sure. One of the most sort of the most anxiety-producing sequences is right after the montage when they're booting him up, and they make the decision to do the whole body prosthesis, and he's watching and listening to them talk about lose the arm, okay? Lose the arm.
Yeah.
Awful bits to see just what they signed away for him as an officer for this particular OCP program. Like the loss of, that's the tropey, right? The loss of humanity, but the loss of agency that comes with signing on to the work is almost as horrific as some of the actual blood and guts violence. Like that's part of the identity of the movie, is watching, how authoritarian corporate regimes can be, in partnership with law enforcement. And it's bad news.
Well, that's what's so interesting. The whole idea that as we are exploring the corporation of OCP, we're getting a sense of the players within this organization. And, at the beginning, we've got Bob Morton, who is very ambitious. He wants to kind of work his way up the corporate ladder. And we kind of we can see elements within him that we like we can see that he doesn't really like Dick Jones, who's the senior, I don't know if he's the senior VP, he's way up there, but Dick Jones is the one who is behind the Ed 209 project, which of course has that awful thing. And of course, Bob uses that as an opportunity to get in good with the old man, the CEO, with his RoboCop plan. And so we're kind of getting a sense, okay, we kind of like the old man. He's the CEO of this company. Dan O'Hurley, he's always a pleasure to watch. Ronnie Cox does such a great job as the terrible, terrible person of Dick Jones. And Miguel Ferrer, we're like, okay, I kind of like him. But that's what's so interesting is like we're establishing the nature of a corporation as essentially like Detroit is so broken they can't even fund their own police department. So they've pretty much handed the management of their police department over to a corporation. And now OCP is running the cops. And that's essentially kind of the crux of how we get into this place. And so within the corporation, we're getting the good guys and the bad guys. But even by the time we have Bob Morton in that scene that you're talking about, you're like, God, I thought I liked him, but he is kind of a total ass. And like he is so about the bottom line and making his project the top and the best so that he can win with the old man, that he doesn't care about the humanity of this, for him, dead cop who serves only as providing the body and the extra pieces that he needs for his project. And that's where you go, oh, wait a minute, I guess I don't like him.
Yeah. You don't end up liking just about anybody in here except for, Anne and Alex. That's pretty much it.
Pretty much. I mean, you feel bad for the cops in general. The captain always feels
Sergeant Reed.
Pretty stepped
he's
on.
always put upon. Right. All right. So you want to get back to effects. What is your next favorite effect?
I don't even know if it's my next favorite. It possibly is my favorite of the whole thing, and it is the horrifying moment when Emil ends up crashing his truck into the toxic waste. I love the 80s where just giant tanks of toxic waste seemed to be everywhere in the world of industry. He crashes their truck into the toxic waste, the tank, and then is walking like as all of his skin is kind of oozing off of his body, and he goes up to Leon, who freaks out, and then of course steps out in front of the car that Boddicker crashes into, and just explodes in just soupy grossness all over the car. It's like one of as when I first saw this, like absolutely my favorite thing. And I still love it to this day. And the fact that I was reading how Rob Bottin described his skin melting, he said, quote, off his bones like marshmallow sauce. I was like, well, yeah, I guess that pretty much sums it up. Sums it up. That is, I just think, one of the grossest but most fun special effects still to this day. Like, they nailed everything about that. It's just horrifying and perfect. And yes, that is why I featured it in some of our show art, because
with abandon.
It highly represents what they were doing with effects for this film.
The thing that I like so much about it is that it feels so much like a garage effect. Like corn syrup and melting, expanding foam. Like, it feels like something I'd see on a YouTube video today. It's like, here, let's do something that's really gross. Here's how you can do this at home, right? The stuff that they used to make this, I feel like I could find in my laundry room, right? Like, I could probably make this with household chemicals, not to the art that they do here, but that's one of the things that I think is so fun about it, is it feels like these guys are having a ball just experimenting with making things that go goo. Exactly. And it's perfect. Yeah. It's perfect. It feels fun.
Yeah. It feels like fun effects. And this is that line, I think, that Verhoeven was talking about with the effects, where it's like, it's so over the top that it becomes comical and you're meant to laugh at it. And he said, like, the censors wanted to take that out of the film because they thought it was so horrifying. And they were like, this gets the biggest laughs in every single screening we show. Like, this is the moment that the audience really kind of clicks with that over the top violence.
Speaking of, this is not a goo effect, but an explosive effect. It feels like we have the spiritual sequel to Rollerball with the armament. In the case where Boddicker brings his buddies their guns, those exploding guns where they just shoot stuff one shot and it explodes. Feels like the Rollerball sequence where they're shooting the trees and they explode to me. It's like everything just blows up in fireballs. Again, that is one of those, another example of let's take the thing. We know militarized weaponry in the cities isn't a great thing, but let's take it so over the top that with one shot we can destroy a car or a storefront or whatever it is. It's so over the top violence that it's hard to take seriously. Though I know a lot of people did. I think that's part of what makes it a bit of a controversial movie. But it is funny. It's funny what they end up doing with the guns.
Yeah, no, it's so over the top. Well, and it ties into just the cars themselves, the SUX, 6000, like all of this stuff, like it's so over the top nonsense that it's just by default it just is it's bad, but it's just so funny.
Yeah.
Another interesting little effect that I don't think I ever really knew about until reading up on this film is that, and this fits having just talked about Predator and the fact that they were using kind of like that the way that the kind of the infrared camera capturing the actors in the film. They thought that the thermographic photography would be too much. This is for the sequence when RoboCop goes into the city hall to save the city councilman or the mayor, whoever it was, from the one. It felt very Harvey Milk, like that whole sequence, but done in a very comical way where he's like, well, I want a car with really bad gas mileage. Just like all that nonsense. But the thermographic photography, they thought they couldn't afford. So they actually put actors in body stockings, painted them with thermal colors, and then they filmed it with a polarized lens filter. So they just faked the whole thing, which I just think is so fantastic to find out.
That's awesome. The thermographic colors. That's very funny. Well, it works. I mean, it totally works.
Oh, yeah.
That whole sequence plays.
Absolutely. No, it is an effects-filled film for sure. And to that end, I think they do an incredible job with all of the aspects throughout from beginning to end.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think even the final, that final sequence or the final Boddicker conflict in the quarry is great because, it's another one that's like right out in the middle of the day, and they use effects such as gravity to make it horrifying. When they drop all the rebar and debris on top of RoboCop, like it's gruesome. Like it looks like, oh God, I feel the weight of that stuff. I thought it was really, really great.
Even going to, when he slashes Boddicker's throat and just kind of like the giant glob of bloody mess just like lands on his chest. It's like,
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And it does lead us to the final climax in the OCP office, which is the, I can't harm an officer of the company. And it gets us to one of many great one-liners. You're fired. Right, Dick? You're fired. Thank you. One of the very, very great one-liners, satisfying, emotional, dopamine hit one-liners in film.
And that actually leads to one of the last bits of effects. It's the stop motion Dick Jones falling, which always looks like his arms are just a tiny bit too long.
His arms are too long. They're too long.
But again, it's of the era, and I just revel in the joy of all of these little things working together. Like so many different types of effects all coming together for this film.
Yeah.
It's all very fun.
Yep, for sure.
Well, should we jump into Verhoeven?
Sure.
Good old Paul Verhoeven.
What a guy.
I don't think we've talked about anything of his on this show before, which is kind of sad because he's done some really great films, some really interesting films. He's always controversial. We're going to be talking about him in our very next series after this when we jump to the Golden Raspberry Awards, and we're looking at Worst Director nominees from 95. And of course, he was nominated for Showgirls, so that will be a fun one to talk about.
What's interesting about Verhoeven, of the movies that he's done, and he's done a lot of movies, he's only done a few that were I feel like were big here, and I think I've seen them all. All the movies before like 1981 I didn't see, and I didn't even know he did. They're like short films, TV series. They're all movies, Dutch movies, I guess.
Right.
And then he ended up coming over here and did, I haven't seen Flesh and Blood.
That was his first English language film in 1985. Rutger Hauer, Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Right. Have you seen that one?
I have not, but I have it on my list. It's, I'm trying to, he's one of the many directors I'm trying to complete more of their filmographies. And so definitely curious to see that one.
But from then on, RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Showgirls, Starship Troopers, Hollow Man, Black Book, Tricked, I haven't seen, and I haven't seen Elle or Benedetta. But most of them.
Yeah, I missed Black Book and Tricked, and I missed Benedetta as well. But I saw Elle, and that was definitely a very interesting one. Isabelle Huppert, very strong performance. Yeah, I mean, his run, though, from 87, you could kind of, I guess, go through 2000. That is a solid run of big effects, over the top. I mean, Basic Instinct, not really big effects, but certainly he's going over the top with kind of the sexual energies within that film. That's kind of a solid run of films that he has where he's really pushing bounds and doing interesting things with effects and playing with kind of satire in a number of them. Such an interesting filmmaker. Where's the strong points in that run of films for you?
Well, I've come around on Starship Troopers for sure. I don't think I loved it when I first saw it, and then I think I was on the bandwagon of what were they doing when I got a little older, and now I've come back around to really appreciating what that movie is doing, especially after, looking at the source material. I'll always have a place in my heart for RoboCop and Total Recall. I think I might be on an island. I really liked Hollow Man. Black Book is probably the strongest. It's a very different kind of movie about, Nazi-occupied Netherlands, and it's truly like one of the greats of his for me.
Is it pushing any bounds in that film, really?
Not like RoboCop is pushing bounds, not like Total Recall is pushing bounds. So for me, I think, maybe we go back to Starship Troopers. I think that was a movie that was really trying to do some interesting alien things and build on everything he learned from, RoboCop and Total Recall, and only, 7 years after Total Recall. Yeah, I thought that was a really strong showing. What about you?
I think so many of those are ones that have stood up, have withstood the test of time. And while there's certainly, levels of Verhoeven that may work better than others. I mean, after I finished RoboCop, I immediately put on Total Recall because I just needed another hit. And that one is so comical. Like, there's so much craziness and the violence again in that one. Like, he's amping it up. He's also starting to increase the sexual energies in that one. We certainly have a little bit more sexual play. It never really goes too far, but it's starting kind of with Schwarzenegger and Sharon Stone. And then, of course, he goes on to do Basic Instinct and Showgirls, which very much really kind of drops a lot of the effects and the sci-fi elements and really focuses on psychology and the sexual nature of humans and stuff. And I think Basic Instinct is a fantastic film. Showgirls, I've only seen once, maybe twice when it first came out. I can't remember now. Definitely an interesting film. And I'm very much looking forward to revisiting it just to see, because that's another one that has been reevaluated over time. And I think that's something that it takes time for people to sometimes click with when it comes to Verhoeven and his films. I think that he puts a lot of satire, a lot of things to think about within the films. And sometimes the violence and the sexuality, it's just too much to kind of, for American audiences to like fully take on right out of the gate, and it takes some time.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, why I'm looking forward to revisiting that. But Starship Troopers, yeah, that's one that I feel very much like you. I really enjoyed it. And then I was like, do I really though? And now I'm like, no, I really do. Like, there's so much going on there. Yeah. Hollow Man is one I've been nervous to revisit because I hated it when I saw it in the theaters. And I don't know if I want to revisit it because, he's doing some interesting things.
What if you hate it more?
Yeah, exactly. He's doing some interesting things with the whole concept of what happens if you're invisible and you have that ultimate power, essentially. But I don't know. I'm curious to see if it ends up working or not.
That's fascinating. Well, I think to say I'm a fan of Verhoeven is, I think that's kind of an understatement. It's like, of all the movies that he's done, even the ones that are questionable, I like them. I like them already. So, well,
and I'm very much looking forward to of his foreign films, like early before he came to Hollywood. The only thing I've seen is Turkish Delight, which is, again, definitely exploring a lot of the the sexual nature of the characters within the film. I didn't like the characters very much. I kind of had a hard time with that film, but you can definitely see where Verhoeven is coming from with the way that he's kind of approaching things. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what I can find of some of those earlier films of his, because I do find him to always be a challenging, very interesting filmmaker.
Original title of that was Turk's Fruit, which feels also like a trucker call sign. I like it a lot.
So, do we want to go talk about any of the cast, or should we just jump into like some of the thematic elements within this film? Because it's
yeah, as long as we're talking about people, we got to talk about Peter Weller, right?
Yeah.
What an interesting guy, Peter Weller. Would you call yourself a Weller fan in terms of his work? Because I think this is our third Peter Weller movie, right?
Well, we did Buckaroo Banzai, Naked Lunch as a member bonus. Oh, you know what? He was in, I have to check myself on this. He was in Star Trek Into Darkness. I wouldn't call that kind of a Weller film,
you're right.
But he was in that.
Yep. No, good call.
And I think that may be it.
Yeah. Okay, so our fourth Peter Weller film, Peter Weller vehicle.
Yes.
Yeah, how's he holding up?
This likely, because I didn't see Buckaroo Banzai until later. In fact, it might not have been until you brought it to the show as your guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
So this would have been, I think, the first thing I saw of his.
Wow.
And then Leviathan a couple years later, which I really enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with that. I'm wondering if that holds up or not. But I had a lot.
Yeah, that would be one I'd be more risky to watch again.
It was that and Deep Star 6, the two underwater monster films that came out the very same year that I had a blast with both of them. I don't know how either hold up. I haven't seen him since.
Where do you stand on Screamers?
You know, it's an interesting one. I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the people. Philip K. Dick, Dan O'Bannon, like, we know these people.
Yeah, right.
They make...
And it was an interesting enough and successful enough film to kind of spur, like, weren't there a whole bunch of sequels, or was it just one? I'm looking now. Screamers, The Hunting. I thought there were more Screamers films. I must be thinking of a different one. But regardless, I enjoyed the first Screamers well enough.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. It was Tremors in space, right? I think that's what the whole concept was. It felt like wasn't it the thing about the underground things that kept sliding along under the surface of the planet?
I think so. Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Because they're called the Screamers, the little alien creatures that you have to be very careful of.
Yeah. So I remember having a fondness for that movie, but it's another one I probably won't review again because why would I want to ruin that? But Peter Weller, in terms of, what I understand of Peter Weller is that he's really strong in this particular kind of role. And then he becomes like a military leader. He's ends up being in a position of authority, captain of a starship, for example. I think he makes a really interesting choice for these kinds of characters. He's got an interesting face. He's got an interesting kind of demeanor. He's one of those actors that when I see his name in it, I know exactly what I'm going to get because he's got this, he's not much of a character actor to me. He just feels like, oh, it's Peter Weller in another movie and he's great. And I don't feel like he's really burying himself in the part.
I just find him to be a quieter actor who never seems to be overtly big in projects. And, it's so hard to say because I feel like beyond the RoboCop films and like Naked Lunch and Screamers, I feel like everything else that I've seen him in is bit parts. And so it's just like he doesn't really have a career that I ever was following. And so it's hard for me to talk outside of kind of this period of his films where I'm just like, I enjoy him enough, but he always has kind of that robotic or kind of lost trying to figure things out, kind of like he is in Naked Lunch. Like that kind of seems to be his demeanor. But I just like beyond the mid 90s, it's like, I don't think of him really in much of anything.
I didn't see this movie, but it comes terribly recommended. Did you ever see Prey with Bridget Moynahan.
I've not seen that break.
I can't even with this movie. Just look at the poster.
Holy
Just see if you can look at the poster and see if you want to see it. I wonder what it's about.
Oh my goodness.
The poster is Bridget Moynahan, inspired by true events, and coming from the margin of poster right is a ferocious lion with blood all over its teeth and face. So real mystery about what this one's about.
The plot sounds exactly like the Idris Elba movie that just came out.
Yeah, it does.
You know, Hungry Lion's trap, in this case, a woman and her 2 stepchildren inside a car. It's like they just flipped the gender and made the
Cujo with lions.
Yeah, interesting. Well, no, haven't seen it.
Interesting. All right, I haven't seen that either, but he's principal in it with Bridget Moynahan. So
opposite him is Nancy Allen. They smartly decided early on it doesn't work to have a love story here. In fact, at one point, Verhoeven felt that it should be a little more serious, and he had them rewrite it with a love story. And he even admitted after he read it, he's like, "That I was so wrong. Take that out. It doesn't work at all." And I'm so glad that they didn't do that. I think Nancy Allen fits Anne Lewis. Like, she works in this role of this character that he just feels very, policey. Like, she feels like a cop. Like I buy her as an officer in this particular case.
Yeah, I do too. I think she's great, and I think I think you're right not having a love interest, and she does have a demeanor and she's cute, right? She is sort of classically cute, which makes her an interesting character that you're sort of on the fence about whether you want them to hook up, right? Like the whole time. It's not like it's not like they're casting a type that is more, militant, militaristic, tough. Like she looks like, casting someone maybe against type that you wouldn't expect to be a police officer. And that gives her a lot of unspoken character traits for me. Like, it gives her already a backstory that is unwritten, that she's had to overcome a lot to become an officer. She's had to overcome sexism and those doubting her abilities and all of that stuff to become this sort of tough officer because she looks the way she does. And I think that's a really smart casting choice. And I think she pulls it off enough to be in the other 2 RoboCop movies.
Well,
I don't know to what extent as I haven't seen RoboCop 3, and I don't even remember how much she's in RoboCop 2. You just watched it.
She's fully through RoboCop 2. RoboCop 3, she's not in it for long, let's just say. I don't want to elaborate.
Okay.
Since you haven't seen it.
Okay, good. Did we talk about, she was in Blowout?
Yeah, she was in Blowout.
Yeah.
She's,
so we have talked about her
Carrie,
before.
Like, she's been in a number of De Palma
That's right,
projects.
Carrie.
I agree with you that there's an element, though, that I think Verhoeven interestingly starts capturing here, and certainly by the time we get to Starship Troopers, seems to have fully realized his desire to take these roles of police or soldiers and strip humanity from them, which we see very clearly in both films when you go into locker rooms, because it's not about men or women. It's like, if you're taking your top off to put your outfit on, you're taking your top off to put your outfit on, and you're going to be naked, and it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Like, nobody's really looking at you that way. And we see that in the locker room. It's brief here, but we do see that here. And then he really kind of kicks it up a notch by the time we get to Starship Troopers. I think that is an element that Verhoeven interestingly tackles here. And so I don't know how much there actually was in the moment in the idea of Lewis having to work harder as a woman in this, because in Verhoeven's world, just the fact that she is a cop, she's stripped her womanhood essentially out of her, and she's just become an officer, and I think that's an interesting element in his films.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? That's a really interesting element. That is an element of this movie that is perhaps, progressive ahead of its time.
Yeah, because I remember even when Starship Troopers came out, the people were like, "Oh my God, like these people, like what is going on here? It's just a chance to show all the boobs and everything." But that's again, that's
not the point.
Yeah, and that I think is one of those things that comes to the reevaluation of his films.
Yeah, interesting. Should we talk about the thugs? Just bust through the thugs, because there's some interesting stuff going on with the thugs.
Sure. Who do you want to talk about?
Well, of course, we need to talk about Kurtwood. Talk about a face for evil. Kurtwood Smith as Clarence Boddicker. He is a diabolical character in this film. I have a lot of fondness for him because I was a big fan of that 70s show.
Which one?
Played that one, that 70s show. I see what you did there. And he's been in a lot of movies that I like very, very much. The Undiscovered Country, being one of them. He is such an interesting he talk about a character actor. Like, he's such an interesting face for this stuff. I thought it was fascinating to see him, again, after, years of watching him in other roles where he's, to some degree, not a good guy, come back and just fully own being the evil character that he is in this movie, right? Just an agent of chaos. He's the Joker in this film, right? We don't even try to understand backstory because he's just chaos.
All I have to say about Kurtwood Smith, who I absolutely love in this film, is when he turned up a couple years later as the dad in Dead Poets Society, it made perfect sense. Right? Let's just say that. Right.
Oh my goodness, so good. Yeah, I totally think so. He's perfect, and I think very, very highly of him in his role as Boddicker. He meets the right end too.
Yeah,
he's got buddies, and the one that stands out the most to me is Ray Wise, Leon Nash.
Why does he stand out the most?
It's so funny, right, that he's that guy, but he's just a face that I feel like I know so well and can't tell you what he's been in that I know him from until I see his face in it. He's done a lot of stuff, a lot of TV, 250 credits to his name. So, he's everywhere. He's done Star Trek. He's done Star Trek. It's been he was in the fan created one that wasn't very good that stands out, but he was also in Gilmore Girls. He showed up in a special run of the Gilmore Girls. He was on The Young and the Restless for 70 straight episodes. Like, wow. He's just been everywhere. Agent Carter. He was on Agent Carter as Hugh Jones, the TV series. So it feels like wherever I turn around, his is a face that just kind of shows up.
Yeah.
You're not. So you're telling me you didn't catch him as one of the faces that you recognized a lot?
He's a face that without realizing, like, he's just that guy. Like, I don't know if I piece him together completely, but looking through his filmography, Swamp Thing, Cat People, The Journey of Natty Gann, Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, Bob Roberts, Powder,
Good Night and Good Luck.
Like, there were a lot of things I'm like, okay, I've seen a lot of films with him, but I guess he's just not a face that I've ever connected, which is weird to me.
Yeah,
but I do enjoy him here. But yeah, if I were to pick one of the bad guys, I mean, it absolutely would be Paul McCrane as Emil Antonowski, not just because of the fantastic toxic waste monster that he essentially turns into, but really it's because he, like, his I like it line. Like, I think that is just one of those iconic lines from this movie that I say a lot, and I kind of just love him in this film. So, and
he was in ER for a long time. As just a sort of a malignant doctor. And I think he was the one, oh man, this is going to take me back a little bit. I think his character was the character who lost his arm in a horrible helicopter accident and then was killed off on the show by a helicopter falling off the hospital or some building and landing on him.
What?
Later. Yeah. It was like, I think that was him. Robert Romano, wow. But it was a good death. So, yeah, ER, post Clooney ER was rough.
Jeez, wow. Well, he popped up briefly in Rocky 2. He was in Fame, The Hotel New Hampshire, The Blob,
Yes.
The Shawshank Redemption. So he's been in some solid things. But this forever will be the film that defines him as an actor for me, because I just have so much fun with his character of Emil.
Yeah, me too.
I already briefly mentioned the old man, Daniel O'Herlihy, as the CEO. And I just have to say, like, as an actor who had been working for a very long time, he ended up in some really fun sci-fi fantasy sorts of films later in his career, like Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, this, and unfortunately RoboCop 2, which I didn't like his character. It seemed a little odd switch for that film. But my favorite, perhaps, is The Last Starfighter, where he is Grig, the lizard alien guy that is co-pilot for our hero Alex Rogan in the starship. And his voice is just like his character in that. I love him in that film.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have put that together. Yeah.
The voice is what is the puzzle piece that makes it work for me. But he's just great.
Funny.
This film idea came from Edward Neumeier. He was working at Universal as a junior story exec, had an idea while he was kind of helping out on the Blade Runner set, and it kind of turned into this idea of essentially this film. He ended up finding this aspiring director, Michael Miner, and the two of them just kind of came up with this whole script and pieced the whole thing together. They ended up pitching it to Jonathan Kaplan, the director, and John Davidson, the producer over at Orion, and they liked it. They liked the satire that they included, and they set to work on kind of coming up with this. It took a while to actually find a director, and Verhoeven actually rejected it initially, but finally came on board after his wife read the script and said, I think you're missing it. I think there's something in here that you haven't clicked with, because he thought he didn't understand the satire, and because he wasn't American, and so he didn't get kind of like what they were doing as far as the satirizing corporate society and the whole idea of kind of humanity and masculinity, all of these different things. And so that's, I think, that was the missing piece. And once he kind of clicked with that and the humor, he was able to kind of tackle it. But that's kind of how this thing came to be. And maybe that should be a jumping off point for us to jump into talking about some of these things that he's satirizing, like corporate power.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting things. Like, it's set in Detroit, filmed in Dallas. Set in Detroit because, Detroit has had Detroit's had a rough history of just being a tough, crime-ridden town, and setting the film in Detroit and putting this authoritarian robot police force in place under the guise of healing the crime woes of the city is an interesting and inspired sort of choice. Like, this is a real pain point in the fabric of American, culture, and I think they nail that choice. But making it under the auspices, under the authority of this contractor, essentially, military contractor, is the bit of kind of political satire that we're talking about. It's funny and horrible that this company OCP is in this weird partnership with the state that can no longer run its own law enforcement effectively. I think this movie allows you to question, hey, this is a silly science fiction action film, and also, like, we're dealing with this stuff. Somebody is thinking ahead that as we look at the over militarization of police in American cities, that's right now, right? Like, it doesn't take very much for us to look at RoboCop and think, hey, this could be a future for us. Maybe not the robot human, cyborg element, but certainly the drone element that makes this movie proficient or prophetic.
Well, and the whole idea of corporate rule and it's such an interesting, the corporation in and of itself is such an interesting entity. And there was a really interesting documentary that came out in the early aughts, I think, called Corporation, that really kind of looked at what a corporation is, like the definition of a corporation, and it compared it to the definition of insanity. And it went through the checkboxes of, like, what does it take to define somebody as insane, what is, and then lining that up with how a corporation is run. And it's like, based on all of that, a corporation is insane. And like it's just nonsense the way that these things are run. And putting the choices of corporate interests in charge of society's interests makes no sense at all. It's never going to look at the people as essential, because it's always going to be looking for the bottom line. How can we make more money? And just the fact that the police are so overrun with crime in the city of Detroit, which has been falling apart as it's depicted here, we're getting this sense that the corporation doesn't really care that the police can't handle it, because for them, that equals an opportunity to use these programs. It's like, let the police go on strike. We'll just build more machines to run it, and then we can manage everything much more efficiently. And I think that's the thing that makes it so interesting in the way that the writers and Verhoeven are thinking about all of this and kind of portraying it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you can already see it. I mean, every corner gives us an opportunity to evaluate the corporation making decisions for profit and for own gains. And that we look at these, corporations as complex organisms of individuals that first exchange when the Ed 209 kills the guy and they come around, and you already brought it up, that it becomes opportunity for another program to get legs, to get funded, to get off the ground. Like, that's the entire ethic of the corporation. And so, yeah, this movie is, it's pretty dark in that regard.
And you even like when, we get those fantastic commercial breaks and the news breaks, and you're getting a lot of a sense of how they're really poking at this time Reagan was president, and the whole Reaganomics element that he had been espousing and everything. And none of it really, like, they're making a lot of fun of everything kind of going on in the Reagan era. Like, the board game that the family is playing together is called Nukem. And like all of these things that just feels so much out of that era. They're finding ways to tap into. And I think that's one of the most enjoyable parts of what they do here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we already mentioned the 6,000 sucks, which is perfect. The SUX, perfect.
And we did kind of talk a little bit about kind of the element, the thematic element that they're exploring a little bit with kind of the humanity of these creatures and everything. And that I think was an important element for Verhoeven. He's actually even brought up the idea of the moment when Murphy gets killed is like his crucifixion. Like, he compares him to Jesus, and then he's resurrected essentially as this being who, as he says, walks on water when he's at the steel mill and everything. And it's an interesting idea of taking the idea of creating this thing that is reborn and, quote, more pure. And I think there's interesting elements to everything that he's doing here. And even just the nature of RoboCop looking so big, like, it's, especially in the 80s, we had Schwarzenegger, Stallone, like all of these incredibly massive heroes in, often in skimpy outfits, like in movies. And so the idea of masculinity also became a key point for him.
Well, that apparently Schwarzenegger was on the short list for this movie.
Yeah.
And Weller worked better because he had a slender frame and could fit in the gigantic suit that they were putting him in. And Schwarzenegger can you imagine Schwarzenegger? Actually, I think Schwarzenegger was probably cast to be the Ed 209. That would have been funny.
Probably.
You have 20 seconds to comply.
Well, and it goes to show, like, the idea of Schwarzenegger coming in for this, you can see Verhoeven saying, okay, that doesn't work, but I definitely want to work with you on something. And of course, the very next project he does, Total Recall, he brings Schwarzenegger in, and just a fantastically fun time with that film.
And gets to wear his street clothes, his civvies.
Yes, exactly. We have to mention, I know we're wrapping up here, but Basil Polidoris' score is just fantastic. Kind of
legendary.
The slamming on the anvil throughout that just builds kind of that metallic feel that we have with the music, as he blends all these different elements together. It's just such a fantastic score. It's
fantastic. Yeah, it really is. And it reminds me of the classic scores of the era, right? The T2. And I mean, there's these all of these robot movie scores ended up aliens write the scores that are just incredible and all fit of a piece. This one's right at home.
All right. I think that's it. So we'll be right back, but first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by St. Samuel, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. Here we go. Sequels and remakes, Andy.
Oh, my goodness.
Run them down. This created a RoboCop cinematic universe.
Pretty much did, right out of the gate. Everybody wanted RoboCop stuff, even the little kids who couldn't see the movie because it had a hard R rating, which perhaps is why Marvel Comics adapted it into an animated, short-run animated series in 1988 that, I think had its home, but it only lasted 12 episodes, so it wasn't very long. Of course, it was a financial success, so they wanted a sequel. Neumeier and Miner started writing it, and then they were fired because the 1988 writers' strike happened. They refused to work, and I don't know. I feel like this wouldn't have happened now because they essentially found scabs to come on to rewrite the script. One of those was Frank Miller, the comic book author, which I was like, oh, Frank Miller actually crossed the picket line to come and work on this. Apparently he did.
Wow.
He wrote several drafts of RoboCop 2, the first of which ended up becoming RoboCop 3, and the second of which actually became RoboCop 2. He had some other people who also collaborated on those scripts, but that was those two films, 1990 and 93, I believe. And Fred Decker directed the third one. Irvin Kershner directed the second one. So by the time the movie was getting made, Verhoeven was busy with Total Recall, so wasn't jumping on board this one. It spurred on a TV show that lasted 22 episodes. Didn't last very long, but you can still find it. I believe it's streaming on, I think it's on Amazon right now, Amazon Prime.
Interesting.
There was another animated series called RoboCop Alpha Commando in 1998. There was a 4-part live-action miniseries, RoboCop Prime Directives, in 2001. And then there was the 2014 reboot just called RoboCop that essentially was full reboot of it. Jose Padilla directed it. Joel Kinnaman, the bore of the century, he was the star in it. And apparently they're trying to make a sequel to the original RoboCop called RoboCop Returns. that would ignore it kind of like what they did with the Halloween films. Ignore everything else that has happened. It's just a sequel to the first film. Who knows if it'll get made? We'll see.
You buried your opinion of the movie in your litany.
Joel Kinnaman, I find very boring and flat as an actor, and I rarely find him engaging. And the fact, as a lead, I could not get into him.
Okay.
Into the film with him as the lead. He was a snooze.
That's clear. And I agree. This is not his most charismatic role.
Would you say that's Silent Night? I know you and the film board just talked about that one. So I'm just saying we maybe share at least there's a Venn diagram in which we do have an overlap on the works of Joel Kinnaman. But the work of RoboCop, there are some things that I thought were actually really cool in the reboot, and I think there are things that just modern effects cycle allows you to do that they couldn't do in the original movie, and I think they probably would have done had they had the ability to do it. And just the use of CG to make this character something that is even more horrific and over the top in what was done to him, and showing that on screen, I thought was really cool. I love when they peel off the robot suit and they actually get what what's his name wanted in this movie all along, a complete prosthetic body. And so all you have is the breathing lungs and a little bit of spinal cord in the head. And I thought that's over the top, ridiculous, and so cool. Like, I get it. I get that it's ridiculous, but so cool. I love the way he has more of his movement. He moves more fluidly. And I think that's I thought the RoboCop itself was better in the reboot than it was in the original. I think they leveled it up in the right ways for me. Did I love the performance? I didn't love the performance. Was the movie kind of a slog and weird slog? Like, why was with those people in it? Like, the cast was awesome, and why did it feel so slow? Yeah. It's an action movie about a robot cop. It has no excuse to be slow, but it was slow. But the RoboCop itself, I thought, was an improvement in that movie. The final fight was awesome. The idea of a robot cop who can't do anything but walk really slowly, definitely I understand your issues with this film, because he is really slow. He doesn't get around quickly. And I think that is perhaps a fatal flaw with this idea of a robot cop ever working, because, people could just run away real fast. And I mean, I know he can aim really well, but if there were a lot of them, he might have a hard time. But sure, they do update that to modern sensibilities, where the RoboCop in that film can move a lot faster. He runs really fast. He can do everything a lot better. But to that end, I will always favor this one. That one, sure, they updated what a robot cop can do, but other than that, there's nothing good about that film.
It's the title of the movie. It's like the point. I thought they did it well. I certainly thought it was better than 1 star, but maybe not much. Maybe not much.
Well, they seemed to clearly miss the entire point of this film of doing anything satirical. Like, they just basically turned it into an action film with an evil corporation. And
100% right.
I'm like, okay, there's nothing in this to watch. It's just a modern action film that is named RoboCop.
But you know what the problem is, Andy? I think the problem that the movie has is that there's they decided to try to hew too closely to the original movie, which back in 1987 had more material to satirize. If you're just trying to remake that movie, we already live in the satire. So give us something else. What else are you going to try to do to level up? And they did none of that. They did none of that in the remake. I totally agree.
Well, and they could have really played with that. I mean, This film came out in 2014. They could have, and then it takes place in 2028. They could have taken things and really found ways to amp it up to do something much more interesting with it, and they didn't.
Okay, so we're here for the awards. We've talked a lot about the effects in the awards. How else did it do in the award system? The award system. Award season.
It had 11 wins with 13 other nominations, pretty strong compared to some of our others in this series. Over at the Oscars, it was nominated for Best Sound, but lost to The Last Emperor. Same thing with Best Film Editing, nominated there, but also lost to The Last Emperor. And it won the award for Special Achievement Award for Sound Effects Editing at the Oscars.
Wow, I can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. You hear the sound of RoboCop, like anytime he's coming in or he's moving and everything. That's perfect sound. Over at the Saturn Awards, science fiction, fantasy, and horror, Peter Weller was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Jack Nicholson in The Witches of Eastwick. Nancy Allen was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Jessica Tandy in Batteries Not Included. Best Costume was lost to The Princess Bride. And then it won Best Director, Best Makeup, Best Science Fiction Film, Best Special Effects, and Best Writing. Over at the BAFTAs, Carla Palmer was nominated for Best Makeup Artist, but lost to Fabrizio Sforza in The Last Emperor. And it was nominated for Best Visual Effects. This is the British window of releases, lost to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which actually here in the States came out the next year. The Edgar Allan Poe Awards, it was nominated for Best Motion Picture, but lost to Stakeout. And last but not least, it was nominated for the Hugo Awards, Best Dramatic Presentation, but lost to The Princess Bride. So this is the last film in our series. We've talked about, again, Inner Space, Predator, The Lost Boys as a member bonus, The Princess Bride, and RoboCop. The category, 1988 Academy Awards Best Visual Effects, had 2 nominees, Inner Space and Predator. Inner Space won. Where do you stand? We've got these 5 films, plus, countless others that were released in 87. This was one of those years that had so many visual effects. I don't know why the category, this is one of those weird categories where they only nominate a couple, or they only put a couple in, depending on how many get are applicable, and all this sort of stuff. And it ended up with only 2. I don't know why. I'd be fine with all 5 of these being nominated. There are other films from 87 that I would put on a list.
The question is, which one would you vote for?
Yeah. Inner Space won. Incredible miniature work of creating the inside of Martin Short's body as you have Dennis Quaid flying around inside there and everything. Plus you have character transformations and all sorts of stuff. Predator, you've got the fantastic creature design. You've got all of the fantastic kind of cloaking that he's doing, the infrared, all of the gore and everything in that film. So just of the 2 nominees, I can see why they're nominated. I can see why perhaps Inner Space was favored. It's a Spielberg-sized, budget with effects.
Also, more people saw it, right? As it's a family film, right? So you get more sort of, it answers more demos.
Yeah, right. The Lost Boys has a lot of fantastic vampire effects. Obviously, the makeup effects for each of the vampires when they transform. But really, once you get to that last fight and everybody is fighting and dying, just all the wonderful vampire gory deaths, it's quite a bit of fun.
Yeah.
The Princess Bride is probably the one at the least. You still have things like what they were doing with the Cliffs of Insanity, the Shrieking Eels, the rodents of unusual size. A lot of mat work and stuff like that. If there's one that doesn't fully fit this list, I would take that off and put something like Batteries Not Included on here. I have a hard time not going with RoboCop, though. And perhaps it's just so fresh in my mind. But this and Inner Space, I think, are the 2 that, have a fully complete slate of types of visual effects. And I just feel RoboCop really achieved quite a bit.
The thing about RoboCop is I can also, I think I'm with you, but I can also see why Inner Space would be picked over even RoboCop because of just the kind of movie it is. I have a hard time imagining the Academy going for a hard R.
Well, Predator was nominated.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, but didn't win. That's what I mean. Say they're all nominated and we get our wish, I think Inner Space still wins.
Well, because of the Spielberg friendliness of that one, I think perhaps you're right. I think it's hard for them to not go opposite that. If throw something like Batteries Not Included on here, which also was an Amblin Entertainment film, that's when you start splitting those votes and maybe something else ends up coming out on top.
Yeah.
That's a tricky one.
So how to do at the box office? You said it was a box office success.
It was, yes. Verhoeven's budget for his film was $13.7 million, all told, which is about $36.6 million in today's dollars. The movie opened July 17th, 1987, opposite Disney's re-release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Jaws: The Revenge, which we've talked about as a member bonus episode. This took the number one spot for the weekend, but Snow White outperformed it during the week and landed in the number one spot for opening week. The movie stayed in the top 20 for 11 weeks and went on to earn $53.4 million domestically and a paltry $700.5 thousand internationally. I don't know if those are complete figures. Regardless, that's what I have. So that gives us a total gross of $144.5 million in today's dollars. This lands a film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $1.1 million and set it up, perhaps unfortunately, for several sequels.
Okay, so RoboCop, Predator, Interspace, and Jaws: The Revenge. Does that complicate it for you? Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I'm really glad we talked about this movie. I love it so much. And even though I also have room in my heart for the updated RoboCop, this is still a very, very special movie for me.
Yes, fantastic film. I had the opportunity to see it in 35 last year on my birthday, which was a wonderful treat. And it's the one I will just love forever. So we'll be right back for our ratings, but first here's the trailer for next week's movie, kicking off what should be a fun series to look at, the 1996 Golden Raspberry Awards. That's right, the Razzies for Worst Director nominees, starting with Frank Marshall's adaptation of Michael Crichton's book. That's right, we're heading to Congo.
Activate the remote.
In the race for the world's most advanced communications technology, a shocking discovery has been made.
What was that?
Lock your remote. Give me a thermal reading result to 6.6.
It will take two young scientists into the heart of the African jungle, where a secret hidden for 2,000 years holds the key to the future.
This is Karen Ross. 81452, Houston, do you read?
You used to work for the CIA, and now you're Travico.
Some will come to it for science.
This is a big deal, Charles. This is a big find.
Some for fortune.
A diamond mine of incredible bounty.
And some to return home.
She doesn't really belong anywhere, does she?
No, she belongs here.
Together, they will search.
My boss, he thought I wasn't going to make it. He sent another expedition.
Drawn deep into a mystery.
Camp destroyed, people dead, a gray gorilla.
No such thing as a gray gorilla.
I saw one.
And the more they discover,
The same hieroglyphics over and over.
the greater the danger.
What do they say?
We are watching you.
Help me! Help me!
Never saw an animal move like that.
Shoot it! Shoot it! How intelligent are they?
See, they're smart. They're too damn smart. Watch out! Go!
We're getting out of here.
What about them?
Put them on the endangered species list.
From the best-selling novel by the author of Jurassic Park.
The myth of the killer ape is true.
Congo, where you are the endangered species.
It is hard to believe we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material for all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links supports the show.
In Season 13, we explore various awards categories and the films nominated in them.
We wrapped up our 1940 Best Picture series with adaptations of Mice and Men from John Steinbeck and Wuthering Heights from Emily Bronte's novel, not to mention the play Dark Victory by George Brewer Jr. and Bertram Bloch.
The 1947 Academy Award adapted screenplay series featured Anna and the King of Siam, based on Margaret Langdon's book, plus The Best Years of Our Lives, Brief Encounter, and The Killers.
The 1952 cinematography nominees included Death of a Salesman and A Streetcar Named Desire, A Place in the Sun, based on both a play and a book, and Strangers on a Train, based on Patricia Highsmith's first novel.
So many great movies based on books and plays, like Beckett, The Pumpkin Eater,
A Boy and His Dog, Rollerball,
The Princess Bride, Congo, The Scarlet Letter,
Jackie Brown, The Deep End, The Gray, The Woman in Black,
and Top Gun Maverick, which I'm very much looking forward to revisiting.
Get the source books at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read or reread from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today. Oh, man, I'm so worried about all of these movies. I'm worried that I might like them.
That's what's fun about them. I bet we will like 3/5. I don't know. I'm trying to guess.
Okay. All right. Letterboxd, Andy, it's time to see where the stars land for Letterboxd. My hunch is it's like last week. We're kind of done before we start. Is it 5 stars and a heart?
Oh, it's straight up 5 stars in our heart with this one. Pretty much always has been. Just, this period, again, it just so defined what I enjoy in film. Yeah, and my youth and everything. Yeah. It's just, I love the films in this era and just the visual effects I love. So, yeah, very easy 5 star in heart.
Absolutely. For me, too. Enough said.
All right. Well, don't forget you can find the show over on Letterboxd at The Next Reel. You can find me at Soda Creek Film, and you can find Pete at Pete Wright. So what did you think about RoboCop? We'd love to hear your thoughts, even the remake. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we'll be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd, give it, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Well, we went we went higher than maybe last week.
High to the top of review activity.
High and right. So, okay. Really, I mean, they're both 4.5 stars. What do you want to do? You want to rock, paper, scissor it? What do you want to do? You want to just do it? You just do it. Yours is your favorite character in the movie anyway.
I've got 4.5 by Matt Singer, 4.5 with a heart. The bad guy's name is Dick Jones. The super killer robot is defeated by a flight of stairs. A man falls in a vat of toxic waste and is instantly turned into a mutant fish creature thing. And then he's hit by a car and is instantly liquefied like he's a human water balloon. God, I love Paul Verhoeven.
That's outstanding. And I've got Demi Adijuibe's 4.5 star and a heart, who says, when people jerk me off, I kill them. This is a masterpiece. Looks great. Score rules. Satire is absolutely on point all the way down. That employee's excitement as their boss is about to be shot through the window. Lee Iacocca Elementary School is a throwaway detail. I'd buy that for $3.99 with a 30-day window to start watching with a 48-hour period before expiring upon pressing play. Thanks, Demi. Oh, God. What a great movie. Thanks, Letterboxd.